Hey everybody, it's Andy, and welcome again to my office in Modesto, California. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in California as well as New York, and this is going to be the final video in my series about how to do a California divorce from the very beginning to the very end. So in prior videos, I went over basically things like, mentally, how to view a divorce, how to prepare the petition, how to serve the petition, financial disclosures, and so on. In this video, I'm going to assume that basically you guys have gotten past the stage where trial has happened or a settlement has happened, etc. Like I said at the end of the last video, resolving the outstanding issues, that typically is the most time intensive and work intensive part. All the other parts basically from here on out are actually fairly straightforward. Resolving the items that are on your checklist, resolving all the outstanding items, typically that is the most, time intensive, complicated part and so on. Just divorces, just by their very nature, I guess, are things where the people involved don't necessarily agree, they feel emotional, etc. So assuming that you guys have gone through the financial disclosures, the petition, all that's been served, and all of the outstanding issues are resolved, the next step basically, stage number 6, I think, if I'm counting correctly. Stage 6 basically is you have to fill out all the remaining paperwork. And as you can probably guess, if you're going through a divorce, California divorces are very, very paperwork intensive. I've had people basically tell me before, oh my God, there's so much paperwork just to do a simple divorce. We're not even fighting or arguing about anything. When I got married, it was only just one form or something. So just don't think that a divorce is just one form. A California divorce involves tons of forms. The good news, however, is that they are all available online generally for free. So it's something where hopefully getting the form is not a problem. So that said, let's go ahead and go over the remaining paperwork. So I'm going to put up a whole bunch of forms, numbers and stuff over here. I don't know your case, obviously, so the forms that you actually have to fill out might vary slightly from what I'm listing here. But what I'm listing here generally is going to be the state-required forms for a divorce where the two parties have reached a settlement of some kind. So hopefully it's going to be something where the settlement kind of resolves everything, like all of the items on your checklist, basically this settlement covers. But the forms are all going to be basically right here. There's going to be the form 170, 180. Again, that's the form that you keep in order to show that the divorce basically, that you actually are divorced, that you're legally single again, and so on. Again, if you don't get a signed FL180, you are not divorced. I've harped on that a lot. I'm probably going to continue harping on that because I see people making that mistake still. The FL180 is what you need in order to be divorced. That's your proof that you are divorced. So anyway, to go back to this list here, the FL170 is what you need. The FL180 is what you need. You also need the forms FL130 and 144. The 130, I believe, has a 130A as well if you are in the military, I think. I've used that form before, but not frequently. It's not a common form that I use. But the FL170, the 180, the 130, and the 144, those are going to be kind of the common packet, I guess. Basically, whenever you have a divorce case where a settlement has been reached, those are kind of like the really common forms, those four. In addition, you have the form FL190, that's the Notice of Entry of Judgment. That one's fairly routine. It's fairly easy to fill out also. So that's number 5. The 6th form is going to be the biggest kind of important form, I guess, in terms of contents. That is your MSA, or your Marital Settlement Agreement. I'll try to write that over here somehow also. But the MSA, or Marital Settlement Agreement, that's the document that basically encapsulates or memorializes all of the terms of whatever agreed upon settlement you guys have come to. So that's the good news. The forms themselves, once you actually have an agreement, are fairly straightforward. Here's the problem, potentially. The MSA, the settlement agreement, the marital separation agreement, or the marital settlement agreement, all of that stuff is unique, generally speaking. So the MSA, generally speaking, is going to be, I guess you can find, if you look, you can find kind of generic template ones, but because everybody's situation is different, the odds of two different parties kind of settling on the exact same terms are fairly low. So the thing is, generally speaking, you do have to write the MSA from scratch. If you can find a fill-in-the-blanks version, great. But even then, I think you're going to need to fill in a lot of it yourself. So it basically is you're writing it from scratch. Yeah, so the MSA, I think mine typically is about 20 pages-ish. So that's kind of roughly what you're looking at. You don't have to make it 20 pages, but mine typically is about that. Most MSAs that I've received from other lawyers are about 20 pages also. You can, in theory, I guess, depending on how complicated your situation is, do an MSA in like 2 or 3 pages. But most of the time for kind of middle class people, I suppose, middle class or above, where you have like a house and kids and that kind of thing, generally speaking, a 2 to 3 page MSA, in my experience, is not going to is not going to be enough. The MSA generally needs to account for things that are commensurate with the level of complexity of the case. So if you have, for example, 2 young people who got married really quickly and they got divorced really quickly, then it's going to be something where there's not really a whole lot of complexity to the case. The MSA can be really short. However, if a couple has been married a really long time, they have a lot of assets and minor children, there's alimony, all that stuff, you're probably not going to fit all of that into an MSA that's only 2 pages. So it means there's basically like a level of, what's the word? There's correlation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's correlation between the complexity of the case and how long the MSA is. So, hopefully that made sense. So that's stage 6. Fill out all the remaining paperwork. Once you have that, the next step, probably the last step here actually, is you have to submit the paperwork to the court. So this is how it basically works. You file the case, you serve your financial disclosures, the other party might file a response. If they do, they file they exchange their financial disclosures also. And after that, you guys go to stage 5 where you work out all the remaining issues. Maybe you have the court involved a little bit, maybe a lot, etc. Once an agreement or once a decision has been made, all the remaining paperwork has to get filled out. That's the 170, the 180, all that stuff that I just went over. But then once all the paperwork is filled out properly, everything has been signed, once an agreement has been reached out, once all the required paperwork has been signed and filled out and so forth, all of that paperwork needs to get sent to the court. Usually you have to drop it off in person. It's not required, I guess. Maybe some courts have like an online way or something. But usually have to physically take all of that paperwork to the court. Usually it's quite a lot, 100 pages or something. Like just you have to make copies of things and so forth. So it's usually not just 1 or 2 pages. It's quite a lot of paper. So you take it to the court, you drop it off and say, I'm submitting a judgment packet for the blah, blah, blah case. Here's the case number. And the clerk will take it and go like, okay, thank you. We'll put it in our system. You generally also have to wait, sometimes quite a bit. So the basic idea is this. All of that paperwork you take to the court, you drop it off with the clerk and so on. There are clerks at the court who have to review it to make sure that everything is filled in properly. Ultimately, though, it has to go to the judge, and the judge has to review it to make sure, for instance, that child custody is specified, that child support is specified, that no child is going to be hungry, for example, because the divorce paperwork is filled out wrong or something. So the judge ultimately has to review it, and then if all of the kind of criteria, all of the parts are filled in correctly, then you have to have the judge sign off on it. The judge does that. The paperwork then gets sent back to the clerk's office. The clerk's office does some other stuff, to process it. After all of that is done, the clerk's office will then mail the copies with the judge's signature back to you. All of that stuff takes time. And the amount of time actually varies by county, and it also varies by time also. So in other words, if you're lucky, you might kind of submit your paperwork to the court at a time of the year when they're not that busy. Like, January 1st, let's say, or something, where it's not that busy, or you might be unlucky and go like, okay, well, I'm going to submit my paperwork in July, let's say. And let's say in July, the courts are really, really busy. In January, you might only have to wait, let's just say 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something. Because there aren't that many cases, there are still some, but there are not that many. But if you submit your paperwork in July, there might be a lot of cases because everybody's getting divorced. Everybody's trying to, get stuff sorted before the new school year starts, let's say. So because there are so many more people filing for divorces and stuff in July, instead of waiting 6 or 8 weeks, you might have to wait 10 weeks, 15 weeks, 14 weeks, something like that. So it's going to be usually a waiting time of several weeks typically. But once that waiting time is passed, the court will mail stuff back to you. Hopefully all the stuff that you submitted initially was done correctly. If it was, the judge will sign off on it and the clerk will mail it back to you and go, okay, hey, congratulations, your case is done. here's your FL-180, it has the judge's signature, please keep this with your records, it's proof that you're divorced or something. However, it's also possible that the court doesn't process your paperwork. Basically the court says, okay, well, you did this part correctly, but all of this stuff is wrong. You got to fix this stuff and then resubmit it and then wait some more. And then once once these errors are fixed, the judge hopefully will sign off on it and then we'll mail it back to you, blah, blah. So, that's a possibility also. It's not a guarantee that your paperwork will get signed off on the first time. Possibly you made a mistake. Possibly the court made a mistake. That happens too. But the thing is, until basically the court believes or agrees that your paperwork is filled out properly, the judge will not sign off on it. If the judge doesn't sign off on it, I would encourage you not to give up at this stage, because you're basically right at the very, very end, and you need to persevere somehow, maybe get a lawyer to help you or something to kind of get to the finish line. You're so close to the end, there's no point in giving up at this stage. So, so basically, you take all your paperwork, you submit it to the court, you wait possibly a humongous amount of time. Hopefully at the end of that, your paperwork is sent back to you, it's signed off on, your case is complete. If the paperwork is sent back to you and it's wrong somehow, the court will tell you, okay, you got to fix these parts, and once you have, resubmit it, and then we'll send it up to the judge again or something. So hopefully you don't have to do that too many times. If you only have to do it once, let's say, but you could in theory have to send the paperwork to the judge, I don't know, 4 or 5, 10 times. Hopefully not 10, but so I guess that's the basic idea. Step 6 or stage 6, I guess, you fill out all the paperwork, you sign everything. Stage 7, you send everything to the court, you wait a really long time, 10 weeks, whatever. And then at the end of that, hopefully you get your paperwork back and it's correct, the judge has signed off on it. That is when your case is finally done and you are legally divorced. Actually, I take that back slightly. The FL-180, once you get it back, you need to check the date on there. So in the middle of the FL-180, there's going to be a field that says marital status, terminated as of this date, or single person status established as of this date or something. That's the date that you're actually single. So a lot of times that'll be the same date that's stamped in the upper right hand corner, that's the date that the judgment was filed. Sometimes it's a different date, but whatever. You need to look at the actual date that is on your FL-180 to figure out what date you have to kind of get married again after, I guess, if that makes sense. So that's basically it. Thank you for sticking with me through all of these various parts. To recap, stages 6 and 7 one more time. Stage 6, you need to fill out all the paperwork, sign off on all the documentation that relates to the agreement that you guys came to or the settlement you guys came to in stage number 5. And then for stage 7, all of that paperwork that you filled out for stage 6, you send it to the court, you got to wait. Hopefully you get the paperwork back and it's signed off on. If not, maybe you only have to correct 1 or 2 things, you send it back and it gets sent back to you, signed off on, etc. But that's basically the divorce process from the very beginning to the very end. I don't know what stage you got, you're stuck in, if you are stuck in one, but if you are kind of contemplating filing for divorce, that is what you are in for. Kind of the general rule, I suppose, if it helps you, is stage 5, like I said, is the most complicated, involved, protracted, kind of expensive stage. The more you guys can, you and your soon-to-be ex-spouse, the more you guys can agree on things, the more you guys can negotiate stuff beforehand and settle things beforehand, the easier your divorce will be. You have to file a court case in California in order to get divorced. And that court case does not have to be contested, though. It can be an easy court case, relatively painless, or it can be a protracted court case that lasts for decades, let's say. But the one factor that really determines how long a divorce takes, how much it costs, is how far apart the parties are when they try to settle things. If they are completely apart like this, and settlement's really not possible, it's going to be a very difficult case, cost a lot of money. But if both parties are fairly flexible, then maybe they can settle it and actually save them both some time and some money. All right? So hopefully all that helped. Go ahead and watch all of these videos again if you could. And share, comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks.